Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. To follow us on Instagram, go to No Name Music Cast Podcast. To send us an email, it's nonamemusiccast@gmail.com. And to visit our website, go to nonamemusiccast.com. Now, on with the show. Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
Now, I will just tell everybody this evening, as I started to record, as I pressed record and play on our equipment, somehow my voice got a bit froggy. So I do apologize if I'm not at full capacity. However, our friends at Vicks Vapo Cool will be helping me this evening with their cough drops.
I mean, to be fair, Tim does sound a little less British when his frogginess comes through. So our friends might be not be happy. So with that being said, I am not doing the open segment today. I had a very, research heavy episode for tonight. So it is my topic. But Tim does have something he would like to talk to you guys about at the beginning.
Yeah, I decided not to do music news at all this week. However, I'm bringing back CD of the Week.
And he's holding some CD that sequentially looks like Mungo Jerry, but I don't think it is.
No, Joy, this is your favorite. In fact, you often write me messages about this person. You know exactly who it is.
Who is that?
It would be Cliff Richard.
Oh, yeah. He eats sandwiches off of coffee cups.
Yeah, well, this is his 1981 magnum opus, Wired for Sound.
Oh, you've talked about this before.
Yeah, so I've had a vinyl record copy of this for some time, but I decided recently that I would replace all my vinyl records with CDs. It's like 1983 all over again. So my very small vinyl collection is now being replaced by CDs. So I'm going through alphabetically and I'm rebuying them. So I had my vinyl copy of Wired for Sound, so I thought, aha, time to get a CD copy of Wired for Sound.
I thought he was going to make an Alan Partridge reference, but all right.
No, actually, that was completely Alan Partridge free.
All right, continue.
So this CD I have is, in fact, the 2001 remastered edition of this album. It has bonus tracks. Now, there are a number of great tracks on here. And if I look through here, you got Better Than I Know Myself, because I love that rock and roll. That's a great song. Broken Doll, Lost in a Lonely World. All good stuff. However, the main event here, this is what makes it a Cliff's essential album. I mean, it's his 24th album he'd released at this point. But what makes this one essential is the title track, which is the track Wired for Sound. Now, Joy, have you ever heard Cliff's song Wired for Sound?
Yes, only because of you, though. I had never heard the words Cliff Richard before this podcast, and that sounds crazy. Now, the funny thing about this is the reason I thought it looked like Mungo Jerry, so he's holding it up, guys, and the shadow of his little face, I guess, looks like a mutton chop. It's not. I now realize it's his shadow. It's just a shadow. I've heard this song because of Tim. Now, it's so interesting to me. I think if you ever spoke to anyone in America, I don't know, even people who are music knowledge kind of know a lot about music would know Cliff Richard. I just don't think they would. It's very interesting.
I mean,
I've heard this song, but only because of you.
This album went to number 4 in the UK albums charts.
Oh, weird.
In the US, it went to number 132.
See, I'm not crazy. Like, I had never, and I love when we joke about my favorite Cliff Richard video where he's eating the sandwich off the coffee cup and he's supposed to be driving a bus. And I'm like, he's not driving a bus with an open cup of hot coffee. But anyway, my favorite part of that video, though, is not the sandwich, Tim. It's the people who are driving towards, I guess, Paris or whatever, or the people on the bikes that are like biking towards Paris, and they're all wearing the most cliche Paris outfits. Like, one guy's got like a beret, the striped shirt, one guy's carrying a baguette in the back, and I'm like, do they really believe every person who just happens to be going towards France all just carries baguettes in the back of their bicycle?
I mean, I believe that to be the case, Joe. I've been to France many times. Stripy jumpers, baguettes. That's how it goes.
Well, I've been to France one time and I did not see anyone wearing a beret. And there was no one of the Olsen twins, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen movies. It's Passport to Paris, and right in front of the Eiffel Tower, you've got that big piece of grass or whatever. And, they fight each other with baguettes. Didn't see anyone pretending to have a fight with a baguette. It was very disappointing. The other thing that's weird about that, and I will say this, my twin sister will tell you, I did not think the Eiffel Tower was bronze until I was there.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought it
like
was
a
like silver.
browny bronze color. They painted it gold at one point for like
Is
its
that why I thought
anniversary.
that? Because see, when you're there, and Tim probably knows this, you know how like it does the light up show every hour on the hour or whatever?
Yeah, and in the evening it is when it gets dark.
Yeah. But for some reason, in my mind, my silly American mind, and this isn't to say I'm not world traveled, don't come for me, I'm not saying that. But, everybody jokes about Americans not knowing a whole lot about the world. I never thought the Eiffel Tower was brown. I just didn't. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the pictures I was seeing, or maybe it's because every photo when they were building it was in black and white. I have no clue. But that was the weirdest. Tim laughed at that. That was the weirdest thing, though, for me, was the fact that I just truly didn't know it was brown.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I said it was gold at one point for some
Yeah.
some celebration of the Eiffel Tower, but yeah, it's like a browny sort of color.
And it takes forever to get up. Have you ever, like, did you go to the top, Tim? Have you been to the top?
I've never been to the very top, but I've been to
The middle?
about halfway up, which is I think as far as you can go these days.
Yeah, which I think is true, but we went to, well, I think we only made it to, the line is long. It takes forever to get, people don't realize because it is a tourist trap, right? Like anything else.
Yeah.
So it takes forever to get, like, I think we were there for like 4 hours. And at some point I'm like, all right, I'm tired of being on this metal contraption. Let me off. It's not that serious. I've seen it. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like it is just a big metal thing. And then we took the, down the river, we took the boat, you can ride the ferries past it and stuff. And that was enough for me. So there you go. That had nothing to do with Cliff Richard, but I will say my favorite part of that video is the people who are just happen to be going to France and they're all dressed in the most cliche French, basically stereotype thing I've ever seen. Thank you, Cliff, for that one. You've made my life with that one.
Well, there we go. Well, let me just tell you one thing more about this album before we move on to your topic. So, as I said, the track Wired for Sound is an absolutely fantastic song. We have covered this on our podcast many times. And I do recommend you go on YouTube, Spotify, or any service that you like and find the video for Wired for Sound. It was filmed in Milton Keynes in a shopping centre, which I've actually been to. There's lots of people in leotards, multicolored leotards, on roller skates. They all have Walkmans, and Cliff is skating with them and telling everybody he is wired for sound. It is absolutely fantastic.
Yep. It's amazing. I will say Tim has opened my eyes to this person that I didn't know existed. So if you are American like me and are like, who is Cliff Richard? Just go give it a Google. I think it's worth your time.
Well, there we are. And just to conclude, Wired for Sound in the UK, where are we? It was number 4 in the UK singles charts. Other places in the world, Australia, it was number 2. Belgium, it was number 8. New Zealand was number 10. And in the United States, it was number 71.
Who knew you're so popular in Australia?
You find a lot of Australian stuff is similar to the UK culturally.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could totally see how those are very culturally comparable.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, our piece of advice is go find out Cliff Richard, specifically Wired for Sound would be wonderful. And did you have anything else, Tim, or is that kind of the beginning of your open segment?
No, that is all I have. So over to you, Joy.
All right, so I did a little bit of kind of back and forth on what I wanted this episode to be. And this is kind of a different one. It is interesting, though. And some of these little facts have made it into our podcast before. Tim knows a little. Joy, knows a little because she was back in her VH1 days where she watched a little pop-up music video. Tim's just 1,000 years old, so he knows a little bit of things here and there. He's actually 1,000, if anybody was wondering. Now, I don't know if we should call this like ghost tracks of history, blah, 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 blah. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about like the unsung or the people who were behind a lot of the tracks that you didn't know were there. It could be
Okay.
like the backup singer or somebody who wrote the music or however you want to see, however you want to talk about. So I picked out about 15 tracks. And these are all things that we would know. So it's not like I didn't pick anything obscure. They're very familiar tracks, but it could be like the backup singer. It could be the person who wrote the bass line, whatever it is. People you just didn't know were involved in this, who really had a great effect on it. But probably some of these people didn't even get credit on the actual track.
Yeah.
So I thought it was worth bringing up. I kind of thought of it like it's our ghost musician episode. Whatever Tim will come up with, they make the title. I don't make the titles. Tim figures it out on his own. With that being said, that is what this is. Voices in the Shadows. I don't know, something cool.
Great album, Joy. Great album.
That could totally be. We need a bumper sticker, and all it says is "Voices in the Shadows." I was listening to my favorite true crime podcast, and there was something. What was it they said? It was like satanic infected or something. They're like, is there a metal band called like satanic infection? Because there should be.
You know there probably is.
It probably is. All right. I did not give that a Google. So if you know one, please let us know. With that being said, we're going to start with our first Voices in the Shadows. This is Darlene Love and the Crystals. There's a song from 1962. It's called He's a Rebel. I'm
Okay.
sure Tim has heard of the Crystals. So the fact here is Phil Spector, good old Phil with his big hair. I don't think he's dead now, right?
Yeah, as I said,
No.
he was a murderer. He murdered a character in a Knight Rider episode in real life.
But he also was not a good guy and went to jail.
No, and quite rightfully so for the
So
terrible
with that
things
being
he
said,
did.
not only did he murder someone on TV, he's also, you can Google Phil Spector. You'll see him with his big hair in the courtroom. Anyway, so Phil Spector was in a rush to release this song. And you know, the Crystals are one of those girl groups back in the day. And before a rival version hit the charts, which I didn't know that. His group, the Crystals, were stuck on the East Coast, so he hired Daryl Love and her group, The Blossoms, for a $3,000 flat fee. When the recording was pressed, it bore the name The Crystals instead of The Blossoms. Love heard the other song on her car radio, was shocked to hear her own voice credited to another group. There was a decades-long legal battle for royalties, and it was not settled until 1990.
Wow. I mean, that's almost like a Milli Vanilli type situation, long before Milli Vanilli was ever thought of.
Well, and he's such a crooked person, it doesn't surprise me. Um, and this is a number one hit. It was one of those all-girl groups, you know, he's a rebel. I think, like, you can, even if you've not heard the song, you know the girl groups from the 60s. But it would be very shattering to hear your voice and you were paid a $3,000 fee to fill in. And your voice is the number one song on the radio at this time in 1962, and your name wasn't even on it.
Yeah, but that sounds a lot like what happened with Steve Lukather or any session musician for that fact. You get paid a flat fee for your performance, and that's it. You know, so that that's the contract you sign. You're going to be in the studio for these amount of days. This is your day rate. This is what we're going to pay, and then you sign away everything that you've created.
I think that the difference, though, in that sense, is that like that's probably a backup musician, not insulting to it like an instrumentalist, but it's like kind of an ensemble. You're part of an ensemble, whereas this was just straight up them singing. I don't know. It's a little weird, and it doesn't surprise me because Phil Spector is not a great dude. If you don't know, guys, he's got a long history there. He is credited with a lot, and he actually comes up more than once, I think, in this episode. Shocker, everybody. Well, he's credited as having some interesting hair. I guess that's all I will give him credit for. And of course, wall of sound, we've talked about. That's the term that's coined when you talk about him. But he's also just, well, he's Phil Spector. We'll just take it for what it is.
Not a good person.
But moral stories, I'd never heard that story. Didn't even know what happened. No clue. I've heard
There
the
we
song
are.
He's a Rebel.
Fresh news from the 60s, Joy.
1962. And since you're like 1,000 years old, as I said, Tim, this is really hot off the presses for you.
Oh, this is brand new.
All right. So the next one is kind of a little bit. I mean, I don't know how much Tim knows about this musical, but I think he knows it exists. I know you're not as big into musicals as I am, but you'd be surprised. Tim has shocked me a few different times and said, I saw this on West
Mm.
End and different things like that. So you've heard of the musical West Side Story, right?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I've never seen it, but I am familiar with it.
So basically, this is talking about Mari Nixon. So in West Side Story, Nixon had to synchronize her breathing with Natalie Wood's performance to make the dub seamless. So basically, for the song I Feel Pretty, that song, they recorded the whole track, but producers found her upper register too thin. And so Nixon re-recorded the higher notes for Natalie Wood because she was an actor first, and eventually the entire song. She was forced to sign a contract, and she said she was forced, Tim. She didn't do this by choice, saying she would never reveal her involvement under threat that if she did, she would never work in Hollywood again.
Yeah, the producers at the time had a lot of power like that.
Well, and it was such a small world. The most famous one is Snow White. I can't remember what her name is, but the lady who did the original Snow White never worked again. And it was because the Disney company basically blackballed her, for lack of a better term, and said they did not want anybody else to see her in any other role. They always wanted her to be Snow White. That is so messed up on so many different levels to ruin someone's career to that point that she never worked again.
Yeah, I mean that is terrible.
And I know if you haven't already figured this out, Tim, the mouse has some dark skeletons in their closet.
Yeah, there is some bad stuff back in the world of Disney. There really is.
But we're not going to say this on this podcast. So this is all alleged. Please don't sue us. We don't know. I'm not going to fight the mouse. But yeah, that is like a known story. If you Google Snow White, basically they just said they didn't want her to ever be associated with any other movie that would ruin the aura around Snow White, which is funny to me because Snow White is I feel like the least popular Disney princess.
I mean, when did Snow White come out? The 50s or something like that?
I don't know. Let's give it a Google. It's very old. I don't even remember what her name was.
Maybe it's the 40s.
It could have been. Well, it's the Brothers Grimm. It's based off the books, the Grimm brothers or whatever. 1937.
Oh, goodness me.
Holy man. That's
Hot off
even
the
older
presses
than
on
we
the
thought.
No Name Music Cast, 1937.
So Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from 1937, the animated film from Walt Disney Productions, had a budget of 1.9, I guess, million, and grossed 400. This is pretty good for that time. 418 million?
Is
I
that,
didn't even know.
is that adjusted for inflation dollars?
It doesn't say, but I imagine it probably is. Yes. It currently holds a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's crazy. Which is weird because I've never been a fan of Snow White. I think I saw it. You know what I mean? It's just like Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. They don't really. Sleeping Beauty was another one I've heard they kind of did that with too. They didn't want her to do anything besides ever be at Sleeping Beauty, which is crazy. Now the concept of some of these movies is extremely dated as well, and there's some stuff that it's a little weird. But yeah, 1937. Here's a
Wow.
question: were the dwarfs small people originally in 1937? How did they do the dwarfs?
Well, I think a dwarf is an old-fashioned term for a little person.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Small people. I meant little person. But did they cast little people in the role? Is that how they got the dwarfs?
Well, it's animated, isn't it?
Was that one animated?
Yeah.
I guess it was. Oh yeah, I guess it was. I'm thinking 1937. Did they even have it? They probably did. All right, forget it, everybody.
There have been little people since the beginning of time.
I know, but I was thinking, did they cast little people? But I guess you're right. I think the dwarves were animated
In this instance, they drew the little people.
There you go. All right. Well, anyway, moral of the story is whoever they caricatured Snow White after, the person, whatever it was, they never wanted her to do anything again. And the same thing, sort of, from what I understand, happened with a few other Disney iconic characters.
Yeah.
So there you go. They did not want them to go on. I forgot it was an anim like until you said that. Like I guess it was animated, so I guess it's whoever they made the character of or whatever they based
Yeah,
it
and
on.
whoever voiced it. That's the way I read
That's
that.
who, yeah, that's probably right. But yeah, that's crazy. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is a song that Tim has talked a little bit about this person, and it has come up on the podcast, and he's hinted he's familiar with this. So you may have heard this come up on our podcasts, and I know Tim will have a lot to say. This is 1969. It is "Give Me Shelter," and it is Mary Clayton.
Yeah, the fabulous Mary Clayton. Mary Clayton, who had quite a good career after this song came out. But yes, she is famously the backing vocalist on this track. Now, I know a lot about this, but I don't know whether you want to take it, Joy, because this is your episode.
I will give some facts and then you can just, if I miss anything, let me know. So basically, the fact is that at midnight, a pregnant Clayton was called into the studio. She showed up in a silk nightgown and curlers, her quote, not mine. Basically, if you listen closely at the 2:59 mark, which Tim, I know you've talked about, you know that,
Yeah.
her voice cracks from the sheer power of her delivery. You can actually hear Mick Jagger in the background shouting, "Woo!" in response to her emotion. Tragically, Clayton suffered a miscarriage shortly after the high stress late night session, which she says was due to the intensity of that recording.
Yeah, I've heard that before. She sadly lost her baby because of this performance with Mick Jagger. I mean, her vocals are absolutely fantastic. And like you say, at the 2 minute, whatever it is point,
Basically
when
3 minutes.
she goes, rape, murder, just a cat away. And then she goes, "Wah," and the voice cracks. And then Mick goes, woo!
But it works so well. Her voice cracking there doesn't, because this is such a like intense song to begin with.
Yeah.
I love it, and she really is the one who sells the song. No offense to Mick Jagger, but she is the voice behind why this song was so iconic. I had heard a little bit about it, but I did not know that she truly thinks that this is the reason she lost the baby. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that in interviews that she said that. Now, another thing this song is very famous for. Season 3, episode 1, Goliath, Knight Rider.
I knew
There's
that
a
was
famous
coming.
scene where Kit is driving down the strip to Gimme Shelter. I mean, it's just perfect. They're in Vegas. It's amazing.
Well, and for me, when I think a lot about the Rolling Stones, I've said this on this podcast, I find them to be a little bit more, yes, I know you can do like I find them to have a little bit more of a bluesy kind of feel to them, even though they're rock, right? Mm-hmm. They're rock. I find them to have a very kind of bluesy feel to them, which I think most people would agree with. I'm not alone in that. But also they have this really interesting way to take songs that are incredibly dark. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what this song is singing about, you need to go look at it because it is a very dark song. I mean, it's talking about the brutals of war and more than that. I don't even want to tell you guys if you don't know. You need to go down the rabbit hole. But for some reason, and take it for what it is, I have never been the biggest Rolling Stones fan. I think they're amazing. I think they're iconic. I think they do, but I don't ever really seek them out, Tim. I'm just going to say it for what it is. They're just not a band I seek out.
The thing is, I find with the Rolling Stones, there are so many iconic Rolling Stones songs across all of their albums that they've ever released. They've released so many good albums. But I find there's a lot of chaff to the wheat, as it were. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of album filler.
That's what I knew you were going to buy term album filler. That's what it is for me.
There's a lot of completely unmemorable songs against amazing songs.
Mm-hmm. And I just don't know what it is. Then they're huge diehard Rolling Stone fans, obviously, and they're one of the highest grossing bands of all time. And I've heard their concert tours are great, but for whatever reason, I just do not seek them out in any particular fashion. But what I will say I do like about them, because I've talked about this, I get bored of just playing rock music. I do. I'm sorry, if you love your rock music and you like your Pearl Jams of the world, you do you, boo. I'm not telling you can't. But I do like when I do listen to them that they have that kind of, I don't even know if I would say it's like a Motown, but it's like they hit that bluesy thing really well.
Well, that's the thing. They were very influenced by African-American blues music at the very beginning of their career. And they've brought in a lot of those influences throughout the years. But the thing is, they're not rock. They are rock and roll.
Yes,
and they
that's
also,
true.
They had disco periods, and they bring in lots of different kinds of music that they bring into the Rolling Stone sound. I mean, I like Miss You. Miss You is a disco track.
Oh, absolutely. You're right on that. You're right. And I think I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think that's what makes someone an iconic, like across the board artists, right? Like I've talked about Elton John's done it, even Madonna's done it, Queen definitely did it, right, Tim?
Oh,
And
of
they have this
course.
ability to maybe they have their own genre they sit in, but they can like divvy around and it works.
Yeah.
That is like the key. Michael Jackson's another example, of course. I'm sure we could be here all day. ABBA even was able to do it a little bit. If you, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but they even had, different genres and sounds. They never stray away 100% from what their core base is, right?
Yeah.
But they're able to kind of play around with it. I think that is for me, for the Rolling Stones, what I do like about them. Now, I will say I don't think I've ever said, Tim, and the internet's gonna come for me. Don't come for me, internet, in my famous words. That's gonna be a quote when I die. Don't come for me, internet. I just don't seek out the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the album Voodoo Lounge the other day.
Yeah,
Their most recent album, Hackneyed Diamonds, was a really good album. And they've had some really iconic albums through the years. But as I said before, there is an awful lot of filler amongst those gems.
exactly. That's how I feel. Now, with that being said, this whole story with Mary Claire is very interesting. So we're giving her props now, and maybe don't call the pregnant woman at midnight. There's some advice for the world.
Yeah, sure, but if maybe she needed the cash, maybe the session was available, the producer called her and she's like, "Yeah, I can be
There's
there."
probably a lot more to that than just that simple statement. You're right on that. Anyway, all right. So number 4, and I think Tim, you've talked maybe or dabbled or we've brought this up before. This is Tony Basil or Basil, as Tim would say.
Yeah, it's Tony Basil.
And the Bowie movement. So, known for Mickey, Basil was actually an influence in the 1970s stagecraft. So, for David Bowie's Diamond Dogs, Basil didn't just choreograph, she also taught Bowie how to use his theatrical mind to present like the urban decay thing he was going for. She was instrumental with the Width of the Circle performance, and she helped create the very avant-garde movements that define the thin white Duke persona. So while most people think of her as, oh, Mickey, you're so fine, she has a much larger thing that she really did to help influence music. And I think, Tim, you've talked a little bit about this before.
Yeah, I mean, everybody just thinks of her as the person who did Mickey. And as we know, that was a cover version of a completely different song.
Yep.
A very similar song, but she reworked it into Mickey. But she's seen as a one-hit wonder. But yeah, she had that influence behind the scenes.
Which is super interesting to me because, in my mind, I always find it really weird when you find, and I guess I know Hollywood is small, Tim, right? I realize this, but I always find it funny when you find people hanging out together that you're like, they knew each other? That's weird. Like in my mind, I've never thought, oh, Tony Basil and David Bowie were just hanging out together. I don't know why.
It's like you could have like touring musicians. You could have like a rap tour. And then you could have a blues tour. Guess what? They all use the same catering company. They use the same trucking company. They use the same sound engineers. They probably have the same managers, tour managers. It's all the same thing. The industry is very small. The genres may be different and your fan base may be completely polarized. But at a purely functional level, all these people are sharing the same resources.
Well, and the thing about it is that's not dissimilar to anybody else in any other field, right, Tim? Like, you slowly, if you're a master of your craft or you work in a certain field for so long, you do start to learn these things. And I know this is on a very small scale, but like when I moved into my most recent role, we attended we did one on like employment law and things of that nature, right? And it was like a little conference, and I literally knew everybody who was putting on the conference because I had been in this world for so long, right, Tim?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, how do you know all these people? I was like, once you've like worked in the industry for so long, you just start to know everybody. So I guess that is true, but it is funny when you see the likes of two completely different artists hanging out and you're like, huh, I guess, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they all know people who know people.
Well, and then you also bring up the fact of the matter is they also work with the same people who work with the same people. How many times have we talked about, what's his face, the Swedish pop guru from the 90s worked with 74 different bands?
Oh, yeah. And as we know, all pop music now comes out of Sweden. In fact, it's always come out of Sweden. It started with ABBA and it never stopped.
I just don't even understand When that, like, why? But I do understand. And I think, Tim, you've kind of hit the nail on the head. They have a really good way of understanding American culture. I think is part of it because of
I
the fact that when you hear them speak, they don't sound like they're not from America. They really just don't.
Yeah, it comes from the fact that in Scandinavia, English is so widely spoken.
Hmm.
Certainly in the 1940s and the 50s, I think German was seen as the second language that you needed to learn.
Of course.
But certainly in modern times, anywhere in Scandinavia, Sweden especially, English is so widely spoken. It's so ingrained in the culture. If you go to the cinema to see a film, it won't be dubbed. It will have subtitles. And as I said
Yep.
before, very fashionable in Sweden. If you see an advertising campaign on a billboard or a shop, they write the slogan in English because it's incredibly fashionable to do so. And like you say, when you hear Swedish people speak English, they either speak with a perfect British accent or they speak with an American accent, depending on the kind of trajectory they've
Hmm.
gone with their English learning. And I think having that understanding of the English language as they do, and also pulling in different cultures, and the fact that you have ABBA, who started that off in the 70s, is just a hotbed for music that's popular in the UK and the United States.
Yeah, and I had never really thought about it until you talked about it on this podcast, and we kind of discussed how much. And like I was looking up, I watched a lot of documentaries, and like I made the joke about they didn't even know chords; they were just pressing three threes on a keyboard till they found what they liked, right? Like it
Yeah,
was very literal. But one thing that's interesting is for those who don't know this, at a previous role that I had, I used to hire people overseas, right, to
yeah,
work in a call center. And one thing that always really helped, because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working overseas and speaking to people at a call center or anything like that. I don't want anybody to think that, but there is communication barriers, right? And you have to take that into consideration when you're hiring these people.
yeah.
And it was always very interesting because I could tell the difference between someone who just kind of knew English and someone who would ingrain themselves in the culture, especially American culture. Maybe England culture, a little bit American culture though. Because one thing I would do when I was interviewing these, Tim, is I would see if they got like references. And a lot of time it came from the ones that were, I hate to say this, that were the best, were ones who had spent a lot of time watching a lot of American media.
Yeah.
So references and statements and things that you see in America made sense to them. And those were the ones that could fake it more on the phone, for lack of a better term of saying it, because you don't want everybody to know all your people are overseas. That's a whole debate for another time. But, and so that's why I was saying that about like having those little things, I think make the difference because they really get what Americans in England, I think it's very similar. I will say, there are some times when we're talking to your English friends, I get lost, but that's a
Yeah, I
debate for another
mean,
time.
having casual conversations, British people speaking to Americans and vice versa, I
Not
think
that
you're
dissimilar.
fine. And you can talk about the fact there's a boot, not a trunk, and all this kind of stuff. But I will say, as somebody who moved from the United Kingdom and moved to the United States, there are far more cultural differences than you could ever originally think there would be. Now,
Hmm.
I've lived here so long, I'm more or less completely oblivious to it. But certainly when you're starting out, you hear things and you're like, really? You do that? Hey, that happens?
Well, and I
It
think it's also like globalization is probably helping too because of the internet.
it is, but you don't fully understand the culture of a place that you've moved to until you've lived there.
That's true too. I'll give you that. You're right on that, Tim. But I've spent many time talking to a lot of Tim's friends in England, and I'll be in like sometimes they'll just start going back and forth, and I realize I've gotten lost. Like I don't know how to explain it. Even Tim, I've seen you be able to like understand what they're saying, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening anymore because there will be references, and even though we are speaking the same, we're literally speaking the same language, but it's just like so that alone, those little differences, I think, really make it an understanding, like the zeitgeist, for lack of a better word, zenith, I don't know, of how like, and I think that that's one thing that Sweden has done a good job at, and that's why I do
Yeah.
think they're able to culturally connect.
I mean, that's something I do struggle with because if there's a situation that happens, I often want to use a cultural reference I'm familiar with. But certainly
Yeah,
with people that I work with, I can't use that cultural reference because they all have no idea what I'm talking about.
that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it. I think I've gotten to a point where Tim generally just says what he's thinking, and usually I can figure it out. We've talked enough back and forth. But I imagine it's harder with someone that you're not speaking to every week on about all the random things of the world.
Yeah, I mean,
Have you ever had a? Oh, go ahead.
even things like I like Vic Reeves, and he had a program, him and Bob Multiple, called Shooting Stars, and there was a bit in it where he said Iranu, Uvavu, and I think there was a license plate which somebody had a license plate that looked like UVA, but the way it was spelled looked like Uvavu, and I
And
just
that's what
wanted
it
to
made you
go.
think
The
of.
person I was with, I just wanted to say Iranu, but of course. That would mean nothing to
Nothing.
anyone that lived here. But like if you lived in the UK in the 90s, you would get the reference. And it's just things like that.
Well, I mean, how many times on this podcast have I said something to you and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about? It's a reference to something from the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, or I'm like, well, that was a commercial or that was a this. And I'm like, we would know. And so, but I do think that that is one thing. And maybe it's like you said, they almost find it fashionably, but the ones that did the best at the job were the ones who spent a lot of time watching American TV. Because they started to pick up on references and different things, and they knew what a high school prom was, and they understood not all of them, but that was generally what it was. It was the consumption of media.
Yeah.
So there you go. But yeah, there's been times. One time, there's many times on this podcast where Tim has said something to me, and I've stared at him and been like, "I have no clue what you're talking about. Completely lost. Don't know." But anyway. But with that being said, but that's what's fun though. I like learning these things because it does make it interesting.
There we
All
are.
right.
And 267 episodes later or whatever it was, you're a little bit closer to my universe, Joy.
A little bit. Just a little bit. I know who Cliff Richard is now. And I know Tom Jones is a household name. I don't know why that cracks me up every time, but it does. All right. Back to the episode. Now, with that being said, this is one maybe we've talked about. It may have come up. I think you're probably familiar with it. I don't know if it came up on the podcast. This is, and you're going to tell me I'm saying this name wrong. English people. It's Sade Garrett. It's Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, Cedar Garrett.
Yeah, what Tim said. Anyway, I knew that was coming. Garrett was the protege, depending on if you're speaking French, of Quincy Jones. She originally wrote Man in the Mirror as a demo. So a lot of people just assume Michael wrote Man in the Mirror. He did not. The details. So when Michael heard her demo, he loved her phrasing so much he asked her to sing the background vocals, textures, harmony, whatever she did on the
Yeah.
I Just Can't Stop Loving You. She was the last minute choice after Barbara Streisand and Whitney Houston both turned it down. She walked in the studio booth not knowing she was singing a duet with the biggest song on earth until she saw him. So if you go watch her talking about this, she did not know who was going to take her song that she wrote and sing it. And they asked her to come in and sing, and she was not expecting Michael to be in the booth.
There we go. I mean, Man in the Mirror is such a good song.
It's
And
an amazing song.
I will tell you, the definitive version of that is from the concert at Wembley Stadium, and it's the way that the band is arranged. It's like a gospel band. Have you ever been to the House of Blues gospel brunch?
No, but I know what you're talking about because
Yeah,
you've talked
it's
about it on this
whatever that
podcast.
flavor of gospel music is. I
Yeah.
really like it. The 5-string bass, the voices, the way they do the breakdowns. It is really, really good.
It's basically what you'd hear at an African American church.
Yeah, basically. And I don't know exactly
They know
what
soul.
what that genre of gospel is called, but there's something about the way that it's arranged musically is really appealing to me. And the version
it
of
is.
Man in the Mirror from Wembley is done exactly the same way, and it is so good.
And I will tell you, I will agree with you 10 out of 10 times. That is my favorite version. I've heard it 1,000 times. I've seeked this song out every way. I even listen to the Glee version all the time. Now, what's funny though is I will say I probably felt privy for a little while to thinking this was sort of like because Michael sings it in such a way that it feels like it's him. He sells it as if it's his song. I never really gave much credence to the fact. And a lot of people don't know this. Michael didn't write a lot of the songs. He said
No.
he did, but he didn't. And so I think that that's also a factor that people don't realize. But it would be really cool to write this demo, record it, put it out to the world, and then be invited back to sing on it. And then you walk in and it's Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what I would have
Also,
thought because it'd be nerve wracking, actually.
you would go in, and the minute you saw Michael Jackson in the booth singing your song that you're going to sing backing vocals on, you
I'd
could
cry.
feel your purse or wallet beginning to swell. You could like, hang on a minute, what's this in my pocket? I can't get my wallet. Oh, look at this!
That's
Hundreds and hundreds of dollars are appearing.
Touche. I'd probably be so nervous I wouldn't be able to sing. And I don't even know if it's not really, that I just can't stop. Like, it's not even just like, so she originally wrote Man in the Mirror. I just want to clarify this.
Yes.
But then she's saying, just can't stop loving you.
That's
those are
correct.
two
I
different
think
songs.
she appears on backing vocals on Man in the Mirror.
She probably does as well, but I just want to clarify. We do know those are two different songs, by the way, guys.
100%. Yeah. No, but I know that Cedar Garrett wrote Man in the Mirror, and then she performed the duet with I Just Can't Stop Loving You.
I just
And
want to
when
clarify
Michael
so people
Jackson
didn't
did
think we were talking about the same song.
Yeah, no. And when Michael Jackson did his Bad tour, she was actually on the tour just to sing that one song with him every night.
And the thing about it is you're right, though. Between writing Man in the Mirror, which obviously made a lot of money, and then singing on Oh, I Just Can't Stop Loving You, her wallet probably got very big.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the minute Quincy gives you the call and said, "Hey, Cedar, you know those tracks you got? Do you want to come down here?" He's like, you just feel your wallet swelling.
Does she write any other music? I haven't really been down her rabbit hole to see
I mean,
what else
that's
she
pretty
wrote.
much all you'd ever need to write, really. I mean, you could live off the royalties of those comfortably for the rest of your days.
Well, she said she wrote songs and performed backing vocals to Michael Jackson, Wayne Chung, the Pointer Sisters,
Okay.
Quincy Jones, Tevin Campbell, Donna Summer, Madonna, Jennifer Hudson, and so on and so forth. She also won Grammys for Best Song. And then she also won something for Jennifer Hudson. What was it? Grammy for the best song for visual media. I don't know what that means. For Love You I Do by Jennifer Hudson. For the musical Dreamgirls, of course. And then, of course, she co-wrote Man in the Mirror, which won a Grammy for Record of the Year.
Yeah.
There you go, guys. Anyway, so with that being said, we're going to move on. We're going to go back to this is also Motown. I won't say in the Motown realm. So this is it's James Jamerson, which is the stupidest name I've ever heard. His parents, why would you name? I hate when people do that. If your last name is Jamerson, why would you name yourself James, Tim? We'll start there.
Well,
Anyway,
I will tell you, I know a William Williams.
if you are listening to this and you are a parent, don't do that. Also, I hate, and I know this sounds dumb and I shouldn't hate it. It bothers me when someone has like 3 first names. Like their name is like Will, Ray, and then their last name is like, I don't know, what's another? Todd. I hate when someone has 3 first names. I don't know why it bothers me.
But also, a very American thing is having last names as first names. Like it would be possible that someone's first name could be Sullivan or Morrison.
Mm-hmm. It is. And you know what's crazy? My dad also hates, like when someone's a junior, it generally means they're named after their parents or something.
Yeah.
But we knew a guy whose first name was Junior.
Yeah, I think I've met a junior before.
How does that even make sense? All right. Anyway, so Mr. James Jamerson is known for the hook of Motown. So he played on nearly 30 number 1 hits. He only ever used one finger on his right hand to pluck the strings, and he called this technique the hook, which I think Tim has talked about before. Have you spoken of this?
Well, I mean, normally when you play bass, you play with 2 fingers and sometimes 3 fingers. But yeah, some people will do that. It gives a very different sound.
Well, he is notoriously known for being the player on almost all like the Motown tracks. He was the background player. Now, one interesting story about him is on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. Jamerson was so intoxicated, of course he was, that he had to record the bass line while laying flat on his back on the studio. Despite this, he played the classic jazz influence line perfectly in one take.
There we are. The room was spinning. However, his finger was working perfectly.
That's when you know you've been playing bass for a very long time. When you can't even stand up, but you're still able to play one of the most iconic Motown songs ever. What's going on? So, Mr. James Jamerson, I don't know what happened to you. I feel bad that that was your name, but thank you for writing some of probably or playing on some of probably my all-time favorite songs as a Motown aficionado.
There we go.
I will always. I thought I had heard you say something about the hook before, but maybe I imagined that, Tim. Maybe I did. And by the
can't
way, he was
remember, but
uncredited.
we have spoken about a lot of stuff on this podcast.
It's true.
It's possible it could have come up at some point.
And for those who don't know, just to remind you that this is people who were uncredited on these songs. He was not credited on any of these songs. He does not list anything until 1971, and he played on like 30 plus songs. And for reference, guys, here's the catalog he played on: "You Can't Hurry Love" by the Supremes, "My Girl" by the Temptations, "Shotgun" by Junior Walker and the All Stars, "For Once in My Life," "I Was Made to Love Her," Stevie Wonder, "Going to a Go-Go," which is one of my favorite songs, "Dancing in the Street," Martha and the Vandrells, "I've Heard It Through the Grapevine," obviously Gladys Knight and the Pips, Marvin Gaye, and so on and so forth. He also played on "Reach Out, I'll Be There," "Bernadette" by the Four Top. I mean, the list just goes on. "Boom Boom" by John Lee Hooker. I mean, "Higher and Higher," which is one of my all-time favorite songs ever, by Jackie Wilson, and he did not get credit for any of them.
Well, I mean, as they say, his resume is amazing.
I know, but that's crazy. You played on all those songs. He actually performed on 23 number one hits, and guess who he narrowly surpassed for the amount of number one hits? And this is someone who says that he was a major influence for them. It's Paul McCartney. Have you ever heard of him before?
Ah,
Yeah, he says that Paul McCartney cites Jamerson as his biggest influence, and Jamerson, weirdly enough, just peeked over Paul McCartney in the number one hits category.
would you look
There you
at
go,
that?
guys.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Everything.
as we know, Paul McCartney was originally a guitar player and he is a multi-instrumentalist, but of course, bass is his most famous instrument. And his lines on bass, McCartney, tend to be incredibly melodic. And that's the sort of thing that James Jamerson was doing when he was playing those sessions.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to keep it kind of in this 1960s realms. I feel like it's gotten better over time now that people get their credit. Like me and Tim have talked about, if you look at an album from yesterday, they credit everybody and their cousin. Anyone who coughed on the album gets credit because they don't want to get sued.
Yes.
So with that being said, a lot of these are older because it was a different time. Now, this is a song that I love. This is "Be My Baby," which I think we've all heard from 1963.
Mm-hmm.
This is Hal Blaine. So he's known for that. You know that drum solo, that boom, boom, pow kind of drum solo at the beginning of "Be My Baby."
Yeah.
So that is his famous drum intro. Now, he didn't get credit for this, but what happened was Blaine actually made a mistake during the session. He accidentally dropped his stick on a snare on the fourth beat. That's how you get that pow sound. Because the snare, for those who've never understood what a snare drum is, you have underneath it these little metal chains, right, that create the snare sound, and you can loosen them, tighten them to get different sounds. Is that the best way to explain it, Tim? I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
I would say
has a
chains, but
wobbly sound.
it's snare material. But yes, they're like
Is that what it is?
springs.
I don't know what it's made of.
They're like springs that have been pulled out.
Yes, but they're like metal, and they create that kind of sound you get with a snare drum. Wow, well, real technical terms happening here, Tim. Somebody who's actually a drummer is having a heart attack, and Robert McGregor or whatever his name is just died if he's listening to the podcast of my explanation. But that's, for lack of a better term, that's what it is. So that's when you hear boom, boom, it's because he hit, the snare, and it made that kind of the riggedy sound you get from a snare. So anyway, on the fourth beat, Phil Spector, here we go again, everybody's favorite guy, loved the accident so much, he made it the foundation of the wall of sound. The mistake has since been used in hundreds of songs, from Billy Joel's "Say Goodbye to Hollywood" to the Jesus and Mary Chain, and so on and so forth. So ironically, he accidentally dropped it. It made that kind of sound. Everybody liked it, and they just went with it.
Well, it's known as a happy accident.
I mean, it makes sense though, because you've got, if it's a four count, you've got four regular beats, and then it does sound cool. I'll give him that. But it is funny that, wouldn't it be and once again, Phil Spector didn't give him credit for anything. Shocker.
Well, again,
If you guys didn't
he was probably paid as a session guy, and that was his input, and he was probably paid well for his session. But as a result of that, he didn't own any of the copyright of the stuff that he was doing.
Tim, just let me hate on Phil Spector. I just
I
don't like
mean,
him.
it's perfectly legitimate to hate on Phil Spector. He was not a good person at all. And that's why he went to jail and did terrible things.
Even though he did influence like all of music, I just don't like him.
And, that is fair enough. I mean, I heard recently an interview with Stuart Copeland being the drummer in the Police. Now, as you know about the Police, they famously never really got on.
Yeah,
And then
no,
they
they hated each
reunited
other.
in the 2000s and they did a tour and they didn't get on that tour either, but they made a lot of money out of it. But like someone asked recently Stuart Copeland about Sting, and they said, the sands of time have moved along, and what do you think of Sting these days? And he says, well, years have gone on, and he said, I find as I listen to them now, Sting is an amazing songwriter. He's written some of the best songs that we've ever had. And, in the realm of bass playing, he's one of my favorite bass players to play along with. He said, that said, I cannot stand him.
That's fair. I also think that, like, while I think Sting is a great songwriter, I don't think he's a great singer.
I mean, he has that sort of high-pitched reggae type thing going on, which sort of sets him apart. I mean, he's not
I think it's very distinct. Yes.
Yeah,
that's
he's
a good
not my
point.
favorite singer to listen to. But he has made some amazing music, and also he does the backing vocals on Dire Straits' "Money for Nothing," and you hear that, and it couldn't be anyone except Sting.
Also, he has like we've talked about this ad nauseum, I think, on this podcast, but like some of his songs are like the highest grossing, most played on the radio. You know what I mean? To like songs of all time. Like he literally holds the record for a lot of different things. The Police do. I just don't. I like Sting. I like his music, but I just don't think he's that great of a singer. I think he's a better songwriter than he's a singer. Said what I said. Don't come for me, internet. All right, so Tim's probably going to correct me on a few words in this statement because I don't speak English well. I'm from Southwest Virginia. Tim's from like England or something. I don't know. I've heard that. With that being said, as the girl from Southwest Virginia, I might mispronounce some words here. So the next one we're going to talk about is Bernie Worrell, and this is the Talking Heads. So Worrell was a classically trained child prodigy with perfect pitch. I don't know, I haven't confirmed that, but that's what it says, who revolutionized the use of the mini Moog synthesizer.
Yeah, the Moog synthesizer, or the mini Moog synthesizer. That was the very first synthesizer that was commercially available. Typically, nobody owned a Moog because the Moog was so incredibly expensive. The first person to personally own a Moog synthesizer was Stevie Wonder. Now, they came out with a unit
I've heard that before.
Yeah, called the Mini Moog, which is the same idea, but it's in a smaller, more portable package, and more importantly, it was cheaper. And at that point, people started, or well-to-do musicians would start having their own synthesizer, being the Moog. Now there are other synthesizers, follows the Prophet. There all kinds of things came out after that, Oberheim, but the Moog is pretty much where it started from. You had things like the Mellotron, like the Beatles would use, which was effectively playing loops of tape when you press the keys down. But the Moog synthesizer was, as it suggests, it was synthesizing sounds completely from scratch.
Well, there you go. So on Burning Down the House, Worrell used the Prophet 5 synthesizer to create these progressive that's what they call it, staccato sounds. We know what staccato is. He wasn't a member of a band, but David Byrne, how do you say his name?
David Byrne.
Why did I think that the E was pronounced? That doesn't make any sense. Admitted the band's legendary 1980s live sound wasn't possible without Worrell's mathematical approach to funk and using the synthesizer to get that staccato sound. And he was not credited.
Have you ever seen the concert film Stop Making Sense?
Yes, I actually have.
It is so good. They
reissued really
it.
Good.
They reissued it in the theaters a couple of years ago, and Hannah and I went to a small cinema in Roanoke, the Grandin, to go and see it. I'd seen it on TV on Amazon Prime or something before, but we were seeing it in the cinema. It was absolutely fantastic, and like Hannah went along just because I wanted to go, and it was something to do on a Saturday morning.
Yeah,
but even she said that concert was so good, and I said, I know.
And this was when they were promoting the Speaking in Tongues album. And I only think I have seen it, Tim, because you've talked about it before on the podcast. So I wouldn't have known anything about it. I wouldn't seeked it out after that. And it's very interesting. I would suggest anybody who's kind of likes that kind of sound to go listen to it. But they also don't just do talking head songs. There's also some like I think what is their solo work, right?
Well,
In there as
they do
well.
one song from Tom Tom Club because Tina Weymouth was in Tom Tom
Oh,
Club.
that's what it was. Yeah. I love Tom Tom Club, by the way. I absolutely adore them as a musician.
Yeah.
Just so anybody knows who listens to this podcast. Not that that had anything to do, but I love the Tom Tom Club. All right. So that was something I had never heard, but I thought it was cool. And I didn't mispronounce too many words that Tim didn't fix. All right. So with that being said, this is not anything I'm familiar with. But when I was doing research, it kept coming up. So I don't know if Tim will know this song. If he doesn't, we'll just blow through it and keep moving. Have you ever heard of the song Amen Brother by the Winstons?
I must
Didn't ring a bell to
confess,
me.
no, I have not.
Well, don't feel bad because I didn't either. So apparently, there's a 4-bar drum solo in Amen Brother by the Winston, and it is the DNA of modern electric music. Take that for what it was. That's just what the internet said. There's a solo. The solo was a filler to lengthen the B side of their album. It was recorded in 1969 on a single overhead microphone, which gave it a gritty, compressed sound that proved perfect to be sped up and repitched, of course, for like kind of 90s jungle kind of music, I guess is what they're saying. Coleman died in 2006 without ever receiving royalties for his multi-billion-dollar contribute to music history. And I say this guy was the DNA for modern electronic music. I never heard of him, but I feel like he needs his credit, so we're just going to put it out there. But I've never heard of Amen Brother by the Winstons. Doesn't even ring a bell. I've never heard of the Winstons, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, it's not someone I'm super familiar with. I mean, there are lots of songs through history where a lot of people have sampled the drums from, and that those are seen as sort of building blocks of modern sort of dance music.
Now, so one of the things that it was used is the Straight Outta Compton by NWA, which is the song from, and then you've got Keep It Going Now by Rob and Bass and DJ Easy. And so, like, a lot of this is kind of like that kind of sound in the early hip hop era. This was sampled, and this is where that comes from. I've also said the Winstons didn't get royalties for the sample as well, so it wasn't just this guy Gary Coleman. But it's a 4-bar drum break that lasts about 7 seconds, and basically this has become very popular in these kind of sounds. So I just want to give him credit. I've never heard the song. I bet if I went and listened to it, it might be familiar because I have heard those other songs, but take it for what it is. It probably wasn't a big, huge hit, but it did have a lasting influence.
Yeah, one other thing that gets cited a lot like this is also the Incredible Bongo Band. The Incredible Bongo Band covered a song by called Apache, which was originally by the Shadows. And that has got drum breaks on it.
Yes.
That's been used in so much dance music,
lot of
hip hop
stuff.
music. A lot all comes from this Apache track. It's amazing.
By the way, that Apache track is one of my favorite things of all time, just so anybody knows.
There we
Also,
go.
you can do it on Just Dance. I might have sung that song quite a few times. Anyway, so with that being said, how much time do we have, Tim? One more song? Two
I
more
reckon
songs?
we've got time
What do
for
we-
one more.
Oh, let me feel like, okay. I'm going to throw this out there. I didn't know this, but it is one of my favorite songs of all time. I've said if I had a theme song, I would want this to be my theme song. This is Dusty Springfield and the Elton John Connection.
Okay.
Now, obviously, we're talking about Dusty Springfield. She's pretty famous on her own. So the song The Bee Is Back, Springfield's powerful vocals are buried in the mix. I did not know that. Did you know Dusty Springfield sang on that song, Tim?
No, I did not know that. I didn't know that her and Elton had some kind of rock and roll connection.
I didn't either. So Elton John was such a fan of her white queen of soul voice that he asked her to join the background choir. She worked for hours on vocal stacks, treating the backing track with the same precision as the lead vocal. And now I need to go back and listen to it because I know that song. Like I listen to that song probably 3 times a week at least. Never noticed her singing in there. Didn't know.
Is it
There
one
we
of
go,
these
guys.
things now you know that you can't unhear it, or is it just totally buried?
I haven't went back to listen, so I need to go find it. But I will report back next week because it's like we've joked about many different vocal tracks. Like once I hear it now, I can't unhear it. But I don't know. It says it's very vocal. She did some vocal stacks. It didn't specifically say, but I now need to go find it and listen to it because I'm like, because I mean, obviously she has a very distinct voice.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how would I have missed that? For those who don't know, I mean, she's a mezzo soprano, wonderful, and a lot of times, there's a lot of jokes about nobody should sing her music, right? You don't have to say you love me, son of a preacher man, so on and so forth. I only want to be with you. All those songs were obviously Dusty Springfield. So I'm like, how did I miss her in the backing of a song that I have heard a billion times in my life?
I don't know, but I mean, it's
Very.
only when I was turned on to the fact that Mick Jagger's on You're So Vain. Once you hear it, you can never
You can't go
unhear
back.
it.
Yeah. And so she's also apparently on some Anne Murray songs as well. So there you go. Who knew?
Joy,
I mean, I guess
you
it makes
are-
sense.
You are informing the music listening public of stuff that no one knows.
Yes. Now, before we go, I'm just going to run through the rest of them. I'm not going to do a little thing. Obviously, George Harrison invited Eric Clapton because of the Beatles on My Guitar Gently Weeps. We know that one. And then there was Jimmy Page. Before Led Zeppelin, Page was the most feared. He said, he did all the session music. So he's on quite a few things. Get By With a Little Help from My Friends is him. And it's Stevie Wonder's There Must Be an Angel. Tim's talked about this. Annie Lennox of the Remits wanted a divine sound. And of course, when Wonder showed up in the studio and listened to the track once, he recorded the harmonic solo in one take. And that's the end of my list. I feel like it was worth throwing it out there because the point of the episode is to give them credit when they didn't get it.
There we are.
Right.
And I'm going with the title, Behind the Music.
Behind the music. I will say the Dusty Springfield one, I think, was the one that threw me for a loop too, because I've heard that song so many times. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, Tim, what would you like to leave the people with?
I would say just be kind to everyone that you meet.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
To remind me of another day to come.